On the evening of February 24th, 1978, 5 men climbed into a beige 1969 Mercury Montego and drove out of the small town of Chico, California. They weren't running away. They weren't in trouble. They weren't chasing danger. They were going to watch a basketball game. The 5 men were part of a local group for adults with mild intellectual disabilities. They met weekly, played sports together, ate together, and supported one another like family. That night, they attended a college basketball game at California State University, Chico. They cheered, they laughed, they talked about the next day, because the next day mattered. The following morning, February 25th, the 5 were scheduled to play in a basketball tournament of their own. For some of them, this was the biggest event of the year. They had uniforms laid out at home, alarm clocks set, families waiting. They were not the type of men who skipped plans. They were not the type to disappear. Their names were Jack Madruga, 30, the driver, dependable, cautious, terrified of snow. William Sterling, 29, tall, gentle, quiet. Theodore Ted Wire, 32, thoughtful, religious, deeply routine-oriented. Gary Matthias, 25, the most complex, a former soldier with schizophrenia, but stable and medicated. Jack Hewitt, 24, shy, soft-spoken, afraid of the dark. Shortly after 10 p.m., the basketball game ended. Witnesses saw the 5 men walk calmly to their car. Nothing appeared strange. No arguments, no alcohol, no drugs, no tension. They drove away into the night. They were never seen alive again. The wrong turn. Sometime after leaving Chico, instead of driving south toward home, the Montego headed east, away from the city, away from lights, away from familiarity. It climbed, up into the Plumas National Forest. This made no sense. Jack Madruga hated cold weather. He had once refused to attend a ski trip because snow made him anxious. The others were equally uncomfortable with wilderness travel. None of them hunted. None of them camped. None of them had survival training. And yet, mile after mile, the car climbed higher into the mountains. By midnight, snow covered the road. By 1 a.m., they were more than 70 miles off course. At some point, the Montego stopped, not crashed, not wrecked, not stuck beyond hope. It simply stopped. The car. When authorities eventually found the car days later, it raised immediate alarm. The Montego was parked neatly on a mountain road, facing downhill, as if ready to leave. The fuel tank was nearly full. The battery worked. The engine turned over. There was no mechanical failure. The tires were not buried. The road was passable. A man could have walked back towards civilization in less than an hour. Inside the car were candy wrappers, a half-eaten snack, empty soda bottles, a folded road map. The keys were missing. There were no signs of panic, no blood, no damage, no indication of a struggle. The car looked abandoned by choice. This is where the case stops making sense. Why they didn't stay if the men were lost, staying in the car was the safest option. The Montego provided shelter from the cold. They could have run the engine for warmth. They could have waited for daylight. They could have used the horn or lights. They did none of that. Instead, footprints in the snow showed that the 5 men walked away from the car. Not downhill, not toward help, but uphill, into deeper snow, into darkness, into forest. Jack Hewitt was afraid of the dark. William Sterling had poor vision. Ted Wire needed medication daily. Jack Madruga hated the cold. Gary Matthias was the only one with military experience, and even he had no reason to lead them into the mountains. And yet, they walked together. The search begins. By the morning of February 25th, families grew concerned. None of the men showed up for the basketball tournament. Phones rang unanswered. Parents drove around town looking for them. By evening, panic set in. The police were notified. Search parties were organized. Helicopters scanned the forest. Volunteers combed the roads. Then a strange report came in. A woman named Rita, who lived in a trailer high in the mountains, contacted authorities. She claimed that on the night of February 24th, she had seen headlights in the forest, a car stuck in the snow. She heard voices. She also heard a baby crying. This terrified her. The weather was freezing. She tried to reach the area but was stopped by snowdrifts. Later, she claimed she saw figures moving in the darkness and a man standing near the road. Then the lights went out. Investigators were skeptical. No baby was ever found. No child was reported missing. But Rita would never change her story. The storm within days, a massive snowstorm hit the region. Footprints vanished. Trails disappeared. Evidence was erased. Searchers could do nothing but wait. Weeks passed, then months. Families clung to hope until spring. The first body. On June 4th, 1978, nearly 4 months after the disappearance, a group of motorcyclists exploring the forest noticed something strange near a snowcat trailer, a cabin-like vehicle used by the Forest Service. Inside, they found a body. It was Ted Wire. He was wrapped in blankets. His beard had grown long. His body was severely emaciated. The cause of death? Starvation. This discovery should have brought answers. Instead, it opened a nightmare. Because inside that trailer were enough food supplies to keep a man alive for months. Canned meals, dehydrated rations, heating fuel. None of it had been used properly. Ted had starved, while food sat within reach. And that was only the beginning. The horror ahead. As searchers expanded the area, more discoveries awaited them. A body beneath a trailer, bones scattered in snow, clothing swapped between men, shoes removed and reused. One man missing forever. Nothing about what happened after they left the car followed logic, survival instinct, or human behavior. The Yuba County Five didn't simply get lost. They made choices that defy explanation. And the deeper investigators looked, the clearer one truth became. Something went terribly wrong that night. Something that no one has ever fully explained. This wasn't an accident. This was the beginning of one of the most baffling disappearances in American history. When searchers finally located the Mercury Montego on February 28, 1978, it should have answered questions. Instead, it created far more. The car was found high in the Plumas National Forest, parked neatly along a dirt road near Rogers Cow Camp, an area so remote that even experienced locals avoided it in winter. Snow surrounded the vehicle, but the car itself was not buried or damaged. This was not a crash site. This was a deliberate stop. A car that could have left. The first shock came from the mechanical inspection. The engine worked. The battery was fine. The gas tank was nearly full. Investigators later proved that the Montego could have been driven out of the area with minimal effort. In fact, one officer noted that a single man could have pushed the car free from where it sat, and yet it was abandoned. Why? Jack Madruga, the driver, was known for being careful, almost overly cautious. He did not take risks. He didn't wander. He followed routines. Abandoning a working car in freezing temperatures went against everything people knew about him. More troubling, the car was facing downhill toward safety. If they had wanted to leave, gravity itself would have helped them. Inside the Montego, The interior told a strange story. There was no chaos, no torn seats, no blood, no evidence of a struggle. Instead, investigators found candy wrappers, snack food, soda bottles, a folded road map. Everything looked calm, ordinary, almost peaceful. The keys, however, were missing. No one ever found them. This raised an unsettling question. Did the men take the keys with them on purpose? Or did someone else? The footprint searchers followed the only real trail of evidence. Footprints. 5 sets of footprints left the car. They did not scatter. They did not run. They walked together. But here is where logic breaks completely. The footprints did not go downhill toward the nearest town. They went uphill, into deeper snow, into colder air, into forest. For men already unprepared for winter conditions, this decision was a death sentence. And yet, they made it. Why this decision is so unnatural. Each of the 5 men had personal limitations that made their choice almost impossible to understand. Jack Hewitt was afraid of the dark. William Sterling had vision problems. Ted Wire needed daily medication. Jack Madruga hated cold weather and snow. Gary Mathias, though physically capable, was the only one with any survival training, and even he knew better than to leave a working car. And yet, all 5 went, together. No one stayed behind. No one protested. No one turned back. This suggests one of 2 things. Either they were following someone, or they were fleeing something. The witness that changed everything. As searchers tried to make sense of the abandoned car, a report came in from a woman named Rita, who lived alone in a mountain trailer miles away. She claimed that on the night of February 24th, she had seen a car with headlights stuck in the snow near the forest road. She heard voices shouting. Then, something that chilled investigators. She heard a baby crying. Rita said she tried to help, but was blocked by snowdrifts. She watched the lights move. She saw figures walking. She claimed one man approached her trailer but never knocked. Then everything went quiet. Police never found evidence of a baby. No infant was reported missing. But Rita never changed her story. Some believe she misunderstood what she heard. Others believe the crying was something else entirely. But her account introduced a terrifying possibility. The men were not alone that night. The snowstorm that erased the truth. Just days after the disappearance, a massive snowstorm hit the region. It buried the Montego deeper. It erased footprints. It wiped away tracks. Whatever clues remained were sealed beneath ice. Search teams were forced to retreat. Weeks passed, then months. By the time the snow finally melted in spring, the mountains had swallowed nearly every trace of what happened after the men left their car. But the worst discovery was still waiting. Because when searchers finally reached a Forest Service trailer deep in the woods, they found proof that at least one of the men survived far longer than anyone imagined. And that survival raised even darker questions. On June 4th, 1978, nearly 4 months after the Yuba County Five vanished, a group of motorcyclists riding through the Plumas National Forest made a horrifying discovery. They found a Forest Service snowcat trailer, a large, insulated vehicle used by rangers during winter. Its door was slightly open. Inside was a body. It was Theodore Ted Wire. Ted Wire's final days. Ted's body lay on a bunk inside the trailer. He was wrapped in blankets, including his own jacket and bedding from one of the missing men. His beard had grown long. His weight had dropped to nearly half of what it once was. The official cause of death, starvation. But starvation wasn't what shocked investigators. What shocked them was what surrounded him. Food within reach. Inside the trailer were supplies meant to keep rangers alive during harsh winters. Dozens of sea ration meals, canned food, dehydrated supplies, fuel for heating, a working propane system. The food was easy to open, no special tools required. And yet, most of it was untouched. Ted had eaten only a small amount, just enough to survive for weeks, not months. Investigators estimated that Ted may have lived until late March or early April, long after the others likely died. He starved slowly, in warmth, in shelter, with food nearby. A mind under pressure. Ted was known as gentle, religious, and deeply dependent on routine. He did not adapt well to sudden change. His family believed that once lost, confused, and without direction, Ted likely froze mentally rather than physically. But even that explanation falls short, because someone else had been inside that trailer. Signs of another survivor. Near Ted's body, investigators found something chilling. Ted's feet were severely frostbitten. His shoes were missing. Later, searchers found Ted's shoes on another body. This meant that someone outlived Ted, removed his shoes, and used them to survive. That person was William Sterling. William Sterling's fate. Not far from the trailer, beneath a pile of snow, searchers found William's remains. His body showed signs of animal scavenging, but investigators could tell one thing clearly. William had died after Ted. He had taken Ted's shoes because his own were gone. This suggested desperation, survival, time passing. The men didn't all die at once. They died in stages. The mystery of the missing man. By now, 4 of the 5 men should have been accounted for, but only 2 had been found. 1 body inside the trailer, 1 body outside in the snow. 2 more would be found nearby in the coming days, and 1 would never be found at all. That missing man was Gary Mathias, and his absence would become the most disturbing element of the entire case. Gary Mathias. The unanswered question. Gary was different from the others. He was a former US Army soldier. He had survival training. He was physically strong. He was capable of walking long distances. He also suffered from schizophrenia. However, at the time of the disappearance, Gary was stable and taking medication. His family insisted he was not violent, unpredictable, or dangerous. But his medication was never found. No body, no remains, no clothing, just silence. Some investigators believe Gary led the group into the mountains. Others believe he tried to save them. Some believe he panicked. Others believe he survived and walked away. A slow, terrifying timeline. The evidence now suggested something horrifying. The men left the car together. Some died quickly in the cold. At least 2 survived for weeks. 1 may have survived even longer. 1 disappeared completely. This was not a single tragedy. It was a drawn-out collapse, and the closer investigators looked, the clearer it became that fear, confusion, and exhaustion had played a greater role than the weather itself. But there were still 2 bodies left to find, and what searchers would discover next would only deepen the mystery. After the discovery of Ted Wire and William Sterling, search teams widened their search radius through the melting snow. What they found next confirmed investigators' worst fear. The Yuba County Five did not die together. They broke apart, Jack Madruga and Jack Hewitt. Not far from the Forest Service trailer, beneath layers of snow and debris, searchers discovered 2 more bodies. They belonged to Jack Madruga and Jack Hewitt. The men were found lying side by side, partially buried beneath a tree. Their deaths appeared to be caused by hypothermia. There were no defensive wounds, no signs of a struggle, no indication of foul play. They had simply laid down and never gotten back up. But what disturbed investigators wasn't how they died. It was where they died. So close. Yet so far Madruga and Hewitt were found only a short distance from the trailer that had sheltered Ted for weeks. Had they reached that trailer, they would have found warmth. They would have found food. They might have lived. Instead, they died just outside its reach. This raised a haunting possibility. They may not have known it was there, or worse. They may have been too exhausted, confused, or frightened to go any further. A timeline of collapse. Based on the condition of the bodies and surrounding evidence, investigators pieced together a grim sequence. After abandoning the car, the group moved uphill together. The cold and snow weakened them quickly. At some point, the men separated Jack Madruga and Jack Hewitt. Likely died first. Ted Wire and William Sterling survived longer. Gary Mathias disappeared entirely. This was not leadership. This was survival panic. Why didn't they help each other? Families struggled to understand how the men could abandon one another. The truth is darker. Under extreme stress, especially in individuals with cognitive challenges, decision-making collapses. Fear overrides logic. Familiar routines vanish. Each step forward feels impossible. Ted likely stayed in the trailer because it felt safe, even if he couldn't fully use its resources. William likely scavenged to survive. Madruga and Hewitt may have been physically unable to continue. And Gary remains the enigma. The missing man. Despite extensive searches, Gary Mathias was never found. No bones, no clothing, no footprints. Investigators searched lakes, forests, and ravines. Nothing. Gary's tennis shoes were never recovered. His medication was never located. His body simply vanished. Some believe Gary suffered a psychotic episode and wandered off alone. Others believe he tried to seek help and died far from the search area. A few believe he survived and disappeared by choice. There is no evidence to confirm any theory. A case without closure. By late summer of 1978, the search officially ended. 4 bodies recovered. 1 man missing forever. No criminal charges. No definitive explanation. No final answers. The Yuba County Five case was closed as a tragic misadventure. But for the families, it was anything but. Because misadventure does not explain. Leaving a working car, walking uphill into snow, starving beside food, surviving for months without rescue, a man vanishing without trace. This wasn't just a case of being lost. This was something far more complex and far more haunting. By the end of the summer of 1978, the Yuba County Five case was officially closed. 4 men were dead. 1 man was missing. No crime was proven. But closure never came. Instead, the case joined a rare category of disappearances where every explanation creates new contradictions. Theory 1. Simple disorientation. The official explanation was painfully simple. The men got lost. They panicked. They made poor decisions. But this theory collapses under scrutiny. A working car was abandoned. Food was ignored. Shelter went unused. A capable survivor vanished. Disorientation does not explain months of survival or methodical movement through the forest. Theory 2. Gary Mathias led them. Some investigators believe Gary Mathias was the catalyst. As the strongest member, he may have encouraged the group to leave the car. His military background could have given him confidence, false confidence, in navigating the terrain. But this theory raises disturbing questions. Why would Gary lead them uphill? Why abandon the car? Why leave his medication behind? And if Gary was responsible, why did he disappear completely? Theory 3. Fear of something else. One of the most unsettling possibilities is that the men weren't lost at all. They were afraid. Afraid enough to abandon safety. Afraid enough to walk into the mountains. Afraid enough to split apart. The unidentified crying sound reported by Rita. The man seen near her trailer. The unexplained urgency. Something may have frightened them into motion, but fear alone leaves no fingerprints. Theory 4. A slow psychological breakdown. This theory focuses on cognitive overload. Routine-driven individuals placed in a survival crisis can become paralyzed or irrational. The men may have lost the ability to problem solve. Ted staying in the trailer but not eating. William scavenging silently. Others lying down to die. This theory explains behavior, but not Gary's disappearance. Theory 5. Gary survived. The darkest theory is also the most chilling. That Gary Matthias survived, that he left the group to seek help, that he wandered beyond the search area, that he chose not to return. But there is no evidence, no sightings, no records, no body, just an empty space where a man should be. Why the case still haunts us. The Yuba County Five is often compared to the Dyatlov Pass incident, not because of violence, but because of illogical human behavior under extreme conditions. Nothing they did was individually impossible. Together, it becomes unbearable. 5 men with plans, families waiting, a working car, food and shelter nearby, and yet 4 died, 1 vanished, and no one knows why. The final truth: the Yuba County Five were not criminals. They were not thrill seekers. They were not trying to disappear. They were ordinary men who stepped into the wrong night and never found their way back. Their story endures not because of what we know, but because of what we never will.